Hey guys, how's it going? It's Travis Mortz with the ForesthillFilmLab. It's been quite a while since I put a video out, so I'm going to try to fire out a couple today and see if I could stack up some stuff to post in the future, so maybe I could keep you guys a little more entertained. I really wanted to talk about my Nikon F100 today. It's really like an awesome camera that I think that everybody should own, but once I realized that I was going to talk about the F100, I thought maybe I should talk about some Nikon lenses as well. I'm basically going to start out talking about maybe Nikon lens buying guide is what I'll call it. Basically just explaining to you guys the difference between Nikon lenses and Nikon cameras, what to look for, and what all these letters and things mean. And then I'm probably going to do a separate video on the F100 alone because it's its own machine that needs a lot of attention as well. Basically, I just wanted to do a short little video about the differences between Nikon lenses, what Nikon lenses work on what cameras, and so on and so forth. So we're gonna get started on that and take a look at some different lenses and see just exactly what all these things are. So this video is for all of my Nikon shooters out there, and I guess it's also for the Canon shooters. This video is going to tell you why you should switch to Nikon. When I started shooting film, I got a Nikon EM with a couple lenses, and I didn't think much of it. It was my first camera. I got it for 60 bucks. Cool. Once I got a digital camera, I realized that those lenses would actually mount to my digital camera. And at the time, I didn't think much of this. I thought that was standard in the world of photography, and I didn't think that I was privileged at all because of that. So I carried on, kept shooting my manual focus lenses every so often. I had a piece of shit zoom lens that was just so much easier to use that I used it most of the time. Fast forward a few years later, I realized I really liked shooting manual focus and that I could get Nikon lenses very, very cheaply. So I started doing more research into old Nikon lenses, and I found out that when Nikon released the F-mount lens, which is the SLR lens, this is the F-mount, in 1959, they have not changed the mount ever since then. So what that means is that lenses from 1959 all the way until now will mount onto our cameras, onto any F-mount. That's, to me, that's amazing. What that means to me is that the market for Nikon lenses is so much larger than just about any other camera company out there because they've been making the same lens mount for so long. And what that means to me is that these really nice, expensive lenses, you could get at a fraction of the price if you sacrifice autofocus. And, a lot of people are scared to sacrifice autofocus, and so was I. I still have a couple autofocus lenses, as you can see, but, primarily I shoot manual focus, and I enjoy manual focus. The lens on the camera that I'm recording with right now is manual focus. The lens I shoot almost every day is manual focus. I appreciate manual focus lenses, so I wanted to learn more about them. What do I need to buy? What should I be looking for? And in my searching, I heard a lot of weird terminology like AI or AIS or autofocus lenses, of course, or lenses with no aperture rings, and it's a little bit confusing. What's going to work on my camera? Can I shoot these old lenses on my camera? What's going to happen? So basically, I just want to show you guys the differences between all these lenses and tell you what you should be looking for your camera. So let's get started here. It all started with the non-AI lens. Non-AI. You might see that in some lens listings. If you're out there searching for Nikon lenses, you'll see it says non-AI. Well, that's pretty much the reason why I made this video, because that's very confusing to some people. So what AI stands for is auto-indexing. And when Nikon introduced the Nikon F, there was no auto-indexing. The camera would be controlled by this fork. The meter would be controlled by this little coupling fork, and then the lens would have a coupling fork, and they would meet up, and it would tell the meter where our aperture is set to and whatnot. But it was not automatic. The camera had to have that needle to get moved across the plane, just like it is here, and So this would be considered a non-AI lens. That's how you discern it, is if it has just this fork. And you'll notice around the edge of the lens, it's very smooth. And we're going to get a closer look at these also. I'm going to get in there with the macro so I can show you guys real in depth, so this makes more sense later. But just giving you the rundown of the history. So it started out with the non-AI lens. This is how Nikon F's metered, and when the Nikon F2 was released, that's how it was made to meter as well. You can see that's coupled up there now. So this is how the beginning of Nikon lenses started, as not auto-indexing. And sometime around the mid-70s, the Nikon decided to introduce a new series of lenses with the F2. They introduced the F2 and they were using the original lenses, and now they've decided they're going to upgrade the lenses, they're going to upgrade the cameras, and they're going to make them more high-tech. They're going to make them a little bit better. So what they did was they created auto-indexing lenses, which have this tab here. And what that means is that you don't have to line up this coupling fork to a needle anymore, because for those of you who have shot with a coupling fork, it's kind of a bitch. It was tedious, it was problematic, it could cause problems if this was something that I was using primarily, and realistically the auto-indexing lenses are much easier to put on. So with the introduction of auto-indexing, the metering system changed, and if you can see on this F2, the metering system is no longer a coupling fork, it is this auto-indexing tab here, and this tab's going to get snagged right here. Well, you see, the beautiful thing about that is not all, but most of all of our professional digital cameras today have this AI tab on them. All of our Nikons do. And that tab that's on the camera is specifically designed for these lenses and these lenses only. Nikon has done a very, very good job of making their new cameras backwards compatible with their lenses. So what that means for you guys, for you digital photographers out there, and for you film photographers, any auto-indexing lens that you're going to buy is going to work on most every one of your film cameras, and for most of us it's going to work on our digital cameras as well. Anything below the D7000 is not going to let you use any manual focus lenses with metering, but that doesn't mean that they won't work. So anyways, we've talked about the non-AI and the AI, and we're going to get a closer look at those in a minute. And then we've got the autofocus lenses. Now these are pretty straightforward. Here we have the F100, and we'll see if I take this off. The F100 has our AI tab here, and that means that we'll be able to couple our manual focus lenses, and you'll see our autofocus lens also has this lip. So Nikon's continued to make these lenses completely compatible with one another, which means I could put this autofocus lens on here, on my Nikon F2 from the mid-70s, and now it's gonna meter with this perfectly, it's gonna manual focus with this perfectly, and this is a new lens. So this is a great example of Nikon keeping it in the family and staying true to their customers. If you've invested in Nikon glass, there's no reason why you can't shoot it until you die, and that's why having Nikon is not better for any other reason except for the lens availability. I mean, I've got a whole table full of different lenses here, and a lot of these lenses are even older than Canon EOS mount. So just to put it into perspective, this lens here is older than Canon EOS mount is. This one's older than Canon EOS mount is. So that means that this lens existed before any EOS lens existed, which makes more of these available in the market, which makes them cheaper for us now, and makes them awesome. It's just such a good thing. And this is a 55-2.8 macro. This is one of Nikon's sharpest lenses, and people are out there buying a 60mm 2.8 autofocus. But why? If we're shooting macro, here's a good example. And lastly, we have the N90. The N90 is kind of a funny camera. I included it here because I bought one shortly after the EM, and I had some difficulties with it because I didn't know about it, so I'm just going to tell you guys. So the N90 is actually an autofocus Nikon, completely capable of shooting all manual focus lenses and metering correctly. But it also can use a CPU lens like this one. You know, this is an autofocus lens. But the gimmick about this camera is, unlike the F100, where you can control aperture through the body with this knob, this has no in-body aperture control. So that means that you have to have an autofocus lens with an aperture ring on it, just like this one is. And then you could change your aperture, and then the camera will read it by using our AI tab rather than our lens's CPU contacts. So, you know, this camera actually relies on the auto indexing, even though it is an autofocus camera, which is why I included this camera in this demonstration, because I wanted to just kind of explain to you guys the progression of these things. Before it was full autofocus, you know, full everything was smart. You had to have these special. They weren't really special lenses, because that's how Nikon made their autofocus lenses, was with an aperture ring, until of course the 2000s, when they started to make them without an aperture ring, in which this camera was not compatible. So basically, I want to get a closer look for you guys at some of these lenses, so that you could really see what the hell I'm talking about, and maybe it'll make a little more sense to you, maybe it won't, but we'll take a look. So here we go. So here we've got three different examples of Nikon 50mm lenses. And all three of these lenses are different in their own way. So we're going to talk a little bit about what each one does and why they're different. So here we will take a look at our non-AI lens first. Let me focus on this bad boy. So here's our non-AI lens. We'll notice that it's got a smooth aperture shroud all the way around. This is the number one way you could identify an AI lens from a non-AI lens. Is it smooth all the way around? Yes, it is. This is not auto-indexing. It also has the coupling fork. But the coupling fork is not an indicator of whether or not it's an auto-indexing lens or not, because after Nikon got rid of this system, like I said, they're very good at being backwards compatible, and all of their manual focus lenses have this auto-indexing fork as well, so it can work with the older cameras. So this lens is going to work on a Nikon F with no meter, a Nikon F with a coupling meter, and Nikon F2 cameras. And, you know, after that, the AI lens is, I wouldn't say it's useless, but it does not serve a purpose in the Nikon lineup of cameras after the F2. So if you're an F2 shooter and you have a older meter, you're really in luck, because you could buy these cheap lenses and they're going to meter with your camera. I love my non-AI lenses, to be honest with you. My 55 1.2 is not auto-indexing. I can't shoot it on my F100. I can't shoot it on, you know, my F2s, except my old one. So I'm forced to shoot that on older cameras, and I'm fine with that. So here is a non-AI lens. This lens is also really, really excellent for mirrorless guys. I hate to give you guys info on that kind of stuff, but the beauty of these non-AI lenses for the mirrorless shooter is that the aperture ring is going to close the aperture as you turn it. So therefore, on a mirrorless setup, it's going to meter as you turn the aperture. So the fact that it's not auto-indexing has no bearing. It doesn't make any difference for a mirrorless shooter, which is another thing I really, really did like. When I was shooting with the Fuji system, I was able to shoot the oldest Nikon lenses they could make, and they would meter on the camera beautifully, like they were made for it. And I was able to get, you know, 2 or 3 Nikon lenses for $100 or $200, and had a full-on Nikon lens system for my mirrorless cameras. So, I mean, you can see how nice and clean this is, and you can see here we've got our aperture blades. There should be 7 of them in there, if it's a Nikon 50. So there's our aperture blades, and we're going to switch to the next lens right now, and you tell me if you notice the differences. So here's our next lens, which is our next 51.4. Same lens, you know, it's a 50. And here we go. We got our same aperture blades, just as this one. You can see that these lenses they're identical optically, as you can tell. And the build of them inside is the same, but the body design's a little different. Another good indication of a non-AI lens is the metal focusing ring. Once it's switched to the
auto indexing, they turn rubber. So that's another good indicator. We're going to set that back down. And our biggest thing here that we're looking at is this tab right here. And what that tab does is that tab is our auto indexing tab. And that is the reason why our manual focus lenses work on our digital cameras today. It's because of this tab here. And I'm actually going to put it onto an f100 so you guys can see. So here we have our AI tab. A lot of people probably just bypass that thing. This is for manual focus lenses. So we're going to put it on there. And now when I turn my lens, my tab grabs that tab. And it's kind of hard to see, but we know it's doing it. There we go. You see it? And that is how this camera will meter. So, up top it doesn't say what our aperture is because it does not know. But as you can see, when I turn my aperture ring, my shutter speed is changing accordingly. And that is because of our auto indexing tab. Hell yeah, thank you Nikon. So that's just badass. Now, we're going to take that off. And lastly, you'll notice our Autofocus 51.8. This is Nikon's best lens because it's the cheapest one they have and it's sharp as a tack. So this is a 1.8D lens. Now, for those of you guys who do not know what the D stands for, it has nothing to do with the optics of this lens. The D is not anything different. The only thing that the D means is that it will accommodate 3D matrix metering. We'll look at the f100. We'll talk about that in a second. So here's our auto indexing tab if we did decide to put this on a manual focus camera. So we do have our auto indexing tab here. But more importantly, we've got our lock ring for our aperture. But more importantly, we have our contacts here. And that's how it talks to the f100. It does not talk to the f100 using the aperture ring. So here, we'll stick it on there. Although it does grab the tab still. But we're going to change our aperture this way, which is just fine. And I'm going to show you guys the one last thing, which is this N90. As you can see, I'm going to put this CPU lens on here. Autofocuses. It does autofocus. But you notice I cannot change my aperture anyway. And it says I'm on f22. It's right. But I have to actually take it off of here and turn my aperture ring for it to work. But you notice how it says f-stops? It's because it does know what lens is on there. So here's that. Oh, actually, here's exactly what I was trying to show you guys. Okay, so see right here we have our 3D matrix metering selected. Boom, 3D matrix metering. Let me stick this lens on there. Now, see how it's blinking? It's telling me I cannot use 3D matrix metering with this lens. And it's also telling me it doesn't know my aperture, but it does have the exposure right. So we could switch it to center weighted. And now it's fine. Now it's happy. And that is because of that. So anyways, that is what I wanted to show you guys about these lenses. And over here, actually, let me show you how it couples up to while we're doing all this mounting. So here is our coupling fork. That is our non-AI coupling fork. And we're going to mount it up. And you can see very nicely how this fork works. And that's how the AI or the non-AI system works. And then if I take it off, actually I don't need to. And if I put it onto here, we can see our new AI tab. This is the change that was made in the Nikon F2 series. We can turn this on there. And now we're moving the tab. Our fork is just there for looks. So that is basically a rundown of the Nikon lens system and what you need to look for if you're buying these lenses. You need to look for that.
So now that we've taken a closer look at some of those lenses, I just wanted to kind of sum it up for you guys in short what all of this means. Basically, if you have a digital camera that is like, you know, the D7000 model or newer. I don't know what the equivalent would be. Maybe there's like the 7200 out now, whatever the hell it is. The 7000 you know, level of cameras and upwards has the auto indexing tab on the camera body. So what that means for you guys is, if you have even an old manual focus lens like this that is AI, like we learned, that means that your camera is actually going to know what aperture you're set at. If you have a digital camera, you can even set up in your camera's menu non-CPU lenses. So for me, I had my lenses set up, you know, at 55-2.8. I would set it to 55-2.8 in my non-CPU lens menu. And what that would do is, as I turn the aperture, my camera will actually know exactly what aperture I'm set at, because I'm going to tell it what lens I'm using. And therefore, it's going to add to the metadata what our lens aperture is. So it's really nice. And for our film cameras, more importantly, say you're shooting on aperture priority, you can shoot on aperture priority with a manual focus lens because of Nikon's auto-indexing system. It talks to the camera and tells it exactly what aperture the lens is at, opposed to the non-auto-indexing where you had to have a meter to do it. The reason that they even had the fork anyways is because the meter was an add-on later. Nikon Fs originally were introduced with no metering, so you would buy a meter that had the coupling fork, you would have your lens that would then have the coupling fork, and it was not automatic for the camera. But after the F2 came out, all Nikon cameras ended up coming with meters after that, standard of course, and they switched to the auto-indexing system for all of their cameras from, like I said, about the mid-70s up until now. We've been using auto-indexing lenses. So basically, if you find a 51.4 lens that is non-AI like this, you're going to have difficulty with metering because your camera's not going to have any idea what aperture you're set at. So therefore, your light meter is not going to work. And then additionally, because of the extra shroud on the outside of this lens, it also, on the newer digital cameras, is going to fit a little bit snug. Maybe too snug for comfort. Let's see. It might fit snug on here. Maybe I could use this as an example and we'll see. So, yeah, you see how tight it is to turn the aperture ring. Now, does it work? Absolutely it works. You'll even see that it will close down and work just as a normal lens would. Are you not going to let me shoot open? I guess not. So, yeah, it does work, but with some limitations. Now, does it matter all that much? No, it doesn't. Especially if you're shooting digital, you could just chimp your way through shooting an AI lens, and realistically, that's not so bad. A lot of Nikon's best lenses are not auto-indexing, and they're much cheaper if they're not auto-indexing because of all this crap I just told you guys. So, if you really want a 51.4 lens and you just can't fucking afford one, go buy a $40 non-AI one. It's going to be excellent optics. It's going to work just the same. And if you're shooting digital, like I said, you could chimp your way through the whole process. You only got to take one test shot to figure your shit out. So, yeah, it's a bit nice. You know, honestly, I've built my whole lens system by buying manual focus lenses cheaply. You know, this is a 51.4. It's a great, excellent lens. I bought this lens on a Nikon FM. Sold a Nikon FM. Now I have a 51.4. You know, this lens I got at a swap meet for 40 bucks, and I just bought a 35mm non-AI lens for $25. Immaculate. So now I have a 35mm Nikon lens for 25 bucks. You can build a 3-lens system for $150 if you do it right. And basically that's what I'm here to tell you guys is look for the right lenses, buy your manual focus lenses, don't be too worried about it. Chances are, more often than not, it's going to work on your digital camera fully, and on the off chance that it doesn't, you could work with it anyways. So, anyways, guys, thank you for watching. I'm really happy that I got to do this. I've wanted to talk about Nikon lenses for a while. It's kind of a detailed thing that you might not even care about, but I care about it. So, anyways, thank you guys for watching, and until next time, keep on shooting.